Welcome to the Beyond 3D podcast, where we explore all things 3D and the important role that 3D data plays throughout the manufacturing process, driving decisions throughout a product's lifecycle. Here, we talk with industry analysts, business owners, developers, and industry influencers, and hear real stories that you can relate to and learn from, and know which trends and technologies apply to your business. So join us as we go beyond 3D.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining this version of Beyond 3D Roundtable, where we're going to talk about the medium and long-term impacts that we're all anticipating that are arising from the COVID pandemic. We got a great bunch of people here today. I think all of you know me, Ron Fritz, the CEO at TechSoft 3D. And we'll just do a quick round robin of 1 or 2 minute introductions to everyone. Let's start with you, Anand.
Thank you, Ron. I'm Anand Mecheri. I'm the founder CEO of Invicara. I've been an entrepreneur in the building technology space for about 30 years, a little over actually. Built businesses around automation, energy management, safety, security, intelligent buildings. Sold all my past businesses to Siemens. I founded Invicara to sort of address the opportunity of digital twins in the built environment.
All right. Great. How about you, Clifton?
I do not have 30 years. Well, I'm almost 30. So
nice.
29 years of experience living on the earth, but I've been in AEC software for about 3 years. Co-founder and CEO at a company called TestFit. We build, I like to call it the most insanely detailed building configurator available to anyone on the market today, but I don't know. We're hiring somebody that does marketing, so I'm sure my name will change.
they'll smooth that out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you.
Cool. How about you, Hilmar?
Hey guys, so I'm Hilmar Gunnarsson, the founder and CEO of Arkio. Arkio is a collaborative design tool for architecture, built from the ground up for VR, AR, and mobile devices. And with it, people can jump into a shared space, do some design options together, import, export seamlessly from Revit, and just get work done faster and more easy than possible before.
Great. And how about you, Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Humphrey. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy and Product Management at Bentley Systems, where I lead all of our construction efforts, particularly around one brand called Synchro, which is our portfolio for construction management, all the way from 4D modeling and pre-construction planning to field workflows and project management and dock controls, among other key construction workflows. I think, like someone else on this call, I guess sadly I have 30 years of experience in AEC, half of it in industry, as an engineer in construction for companies like Clark Construction and Army Corps' construction research facility, and the last 15 years building out engineering construction software technology.
Great. And Hilmar, you were with Autodesk for a bit as well, right? When one of your earlier companies was acquired, is that correct?
Correct. So Autodesk acquired my earlier company called Modio, which had nothing to do with the AEC industry, actually. We did like a creative toy design app where you could create toys on an iPad and just 3D print them easily. Right. This was kind of at the start of the kind of consumer 3D printing craze that kind of never really matured. But so as a result of that, I spent 2 years at Autodesk. And then when I left, I started working on Modio. And I guess like Clifton, I'm kind of a newcomer to the AEC industry. definitely don't have 30 years of experience, although I'm older than 30 though. But.
Well, good. We have a good mix of people with long experience in the construction and software industry who've seen things change and a lot of things stay the same, as well as some folks that are more new to it that are driving some of the change, and people with big company experience and small company experience. I mean, Anand, your experience probably couldn't be more extreme, from Siemens to going back to your own startup. So we'll just see where this conversation leads us, and we'll just start with that question that we began with, of what people's predictions are of what we think the the medium and longer term impacts will be from the pandemic on construction software. I guess we'll just go in the same order to start, and then it'll all get crazy from there. How about you, Anand?
Yeah, sure. So the medium term, clearly we all see the impact today, right? I mean, I was on a call with some clients in Singapore today. For example, construction is nearly ground to a very, very slow pace simply because there are no construction workers. We see the same thing in India. We see several projects not getting funded, and there's that aspect as well. So in the short, and there is a concern, overriding concern around demand, right? For how long will the demand contraction remain in the commercial real estate space? So retail, of course, already was contracting, and this just accentuated it like crazy. So there is clear medium-term impact. Long-term, I personally think things are going to be very much back to normal, is my view. It's a personal view. But of course, there will be some lessons learned. There'll be better investments around technology to maintain better air quality and efficiencies all around. This becomes a trigger for change. That's how I see it long term, but coming back to normal.
Right. What's up on your mind, Clifton?
I think the prefab modular numbers are at like 500 projects in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're still really far behind in the means and methods of construction in the United States. I don't think that's going to change. But what I do think is already changing is you're starting to see firm leaders in the development world, the architecture world, the brokerage world, even the banking world, investors in buildings starting to adopt new technologies. And I'm talking about Zoom. I'm talking about chat tools like Slack. That stuff is disrupting email. So we're still pretty far behind in terms of investing in the right things to push everybody into the 21st century. Practically, the housing industry is going to do just fine. TestFit, we've grown significantly this year. And all we offer is a housing configurator app. So haven't seen the numbers slip at all. Have seen actually multifamily get more interest as the year has gone on. There have been some office guys and some retail guys that have bought TestFit because they're starting to look at multifamily. So that space is going to be very hot, and if there's someone that can crack the nut on prefab, now's like the time to do it. Let's see. I also think that just in general, like we're going to see a lot less commodity buildings built outside of multifamily, and it's because people are realizing that my workers 20% of the week can work from home. I've been running a decentralized company for 3.5 years. We've never had an office that everybody goes to. I would rather hire the right person, and if they live in Canada, I don't care. They don't have to live in Dallas, Texas. So I think we're starting to see more operationally just companies that are growing and changing. They're just going to do it differently. And there's software apps out there that I can get compliant in any state in the country to hire an employee like in a week. So it's pretty cool what technology's been able to enable on the operations side of businesses.
Yeah, interesting. Anand also has a 100% remote company as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So Hilmar, as you dive into this AEC world, what are your predictions of the impacts?
So I think there are several. If you look at the software industry itself, this kind of a disruption basically creates a lot of opportunities in many ways. Like people have had to go to a mode of working a lot remotely, and kind of less of kind of going always to the same place to get work done. Like some of the other guys, like Arkio is pretty much a kind of remote first company. We have employees in 4 countries scattered across Europe. And that's kind of been the mode that we've been working in for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a result of COVID, that a lot of people are starting to kind of experience this. And that definitely creates opportunities for kind of new tech, new tools to basically to come along and kind of disrupt the way things get done. But I also think that kind of, if I look at kind of my customers, the architecture firms, engineering firms, they are much more kind of approachable now. They've had to take a look at kind of how do we do business, how do we get work done? And this kind of huge shift towards thinking about like, how do we collaborate if we're not in the same place? And long term, I'm a big believer that kind of the idea of always have to being in a certain place to do something will start to diminish.
Mm-hmm.
And for the AEC industry, what I think is kind of most interesting about that is this idea that you kind of have this design process and you have people getting together to try to get something done, and they're staring at these kind of these flat screens to imagine basically what will happen when you construct something. And in the not too distant future, it's probably going to seem crazy to the fact that we're doing business like that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being able to kind of walk through these buildings virtually before any construction starts.
Right.
So kind of this kind of the whole thing that's happened over the last few months, and people just getting together on Zoom calls like this and getting used to kind of working more remotely, and kind of the idea that I can be present in a place even though I'm not physically present.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're starting to now see kind of the first kind of signs of how that will basically kind of change everything in the long term.
Gotcha. All right. What's your point of view, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar point of view. I mean, kind of macro in terms of what COVID has done to the industry is, I mean, I've seen a significant downturn in commercial buildings, right? And they've basically had to shut down at different times. And the way they've come back is through, selectively only having the most critical resources on the job site to get work done, and everyone else has to be remote. So had they learned to go remote, same kind of perspective. I think I think housing is interesting, but infrastructure is probably going to increase. I mean, this is kind of geopolitical, and it's all based on funding. Infrastructure spend is usually a lot more stable, but it's going to grow as a consequence of potential stimulus plans, and the fact that it was less impacted by COVID because workers were less, they're spatially sprouted over large areas. So the dangers to them working outside on a highway project or a rail project were a lot less than packing a lot of subcontractors into a small space in a building. But what I would say on the technology front is similar to what Hilmar said. The key drive to plan projects and then drive the planning through execution, through collaboration across different disciplines and different types of people that drive the operations of construction. It used to be, get as many people on site and collaborate in a common location where you're close to the project, because the project is the context by which you can have a discussion and make your plans and execute and make sure the project is in control. Well, when that can't happen anymore, collaboration has to happen digitally. So we're seeing a lot more virtual design and construction. So whether it's taking task-based workflows and capturing data in the field and seeing and tracking performance metrics versus via cloud data repositories and analytics, and then trying to drive it through there, and then applying 3D, 4D model, 5D model context as the way I navigate my data and collaborate with teams that are no longer co-located on the project site, and to make sure that the teams on the project site are working in the right areas. That is COVID has been has helped kind of drive a lot more interest in those type of applications. So That's one of the things that Synchro does well, and it could become the collaboration environment, like Zoom is for these type of calls.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing that is I think some people might go back to the old way of collaboration when they can get back on the job site. But I think for a lot of people, it's going to stick.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I see is the way we manage safety, health and safety on the job site is going to be, it was always kind of a big deal, but now there's going to be even a bigger requirement. I don't think some of the health and safety requirements that we have as a result of COVID are going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
They might get lessened, but it's changed our, how we think about it. So providing automation for health and safety and programs is an area that will pick up as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that the construction industry has been driven to digitize faster than they were. Faster than they were anyway. That's true of almost every industry. And, there's kind of this running joke that it's not the CEO or the CIO or market forces that drove digitization. It was COVID, and all of your companies and all the companies related to building construction software are there to try to accelerate the digitization of this industry that has all sorts of parts of it that need or would benefit from digitization. So there was a lot of talk about collaboration as kind of the first way that people move from being physically located or the old way of doing stuff into collaboration. What else do we think are going to be the things that'll change first, and what things that should be digitized are going to be held on to fiercely and go and die slowly? Now that we could blow the order up, anyone can go if they think my question makes any sense at all. I'm not sure it does, but we'll find out.
Well, I think the value of like whiteboards and trace paper, basically just disappeared overnight, which is great, in my opinion. And I mean, I think, with VR, Arkio, now's your time to shine, because it's possibly a superior building demonstration technology than just showing renderings, right? And I think it helps solve the core problem with Zoom meetings, that we're all still like in a room somewhere. We're not together in a room. And so if you can basically hijack the visual system of your brain and transport you somewhere else, I could see it being very valuable. But still, I think, the core gasoline for this fire has been like my 68-year-old father saying, wow, it's amazing how productive people can be just on their laptop at home. And so we're starting to see, like, I don't know, the 80s mentality of how you manage people and run a business finally evaporate. And that in my mind is got to be like the biggest win from COVID when it comes to like soft skills workers is we're getting a lot more creative freedom with our time.
Mm-hmm. What other stuff do we think are going to digitize first and last?
I mean, I'll weigh in here, right? Look, I got a solution that's very focused on delivering 4D, 5D, 3D, digital twin model-based workflows. But we're also focused on meeting customers where they're at today, where the market is today, which is, still digitizing task and form-based workflows. And I think that is probably still going to accelerate faster than our model-based workflows. Not because it's not compelling, and not because it's easier to collaborate with a 3D model context, because it is. It's easier to make sure you do the right work. It's easier to communicate. It's easier to coordinate around a visual context. But the reality of our business is, although COVID has accelerated some digitization and the desire to get into virtualization of work, particularly around a model context, the reality is our industry still doesn't deliver a model as a contractual document. So I think you're going to see collaboration and automation around tasks like safety and quality and daily logs, and document controls, and continue to just become advanced and become the norm, and then pull through model, all those technologies will have to be able to transfer to the model as a context for those workflows at some point. But the industry, the way the industry is organized, limits the availability of the data right now. Now, some of that can change as we go, if we make modeling, authoring easier for, say, a contractor, and or they start to adopt more just reality modeling, and they get reality model context. But at the end of the day, they're not building what's there. They're building what's delivered in the design intent documentation, which needs to move to a model-based contract deliverable. And some of that's happening more on the building side and less on the, say, the infrastructure side, gets driven by, say, public DOTs and whatnot. But the DOTs are also starting to look at that. Anyway, so hopefully that wasn't too much of a ramble, but that's my view of what'll stick.
Rich, were there firms that were already up and running that didn't see much of a blip versus the firms that adopted as a result of COVID? Like, can you kind of see a Venn diagram of the two?
Well, what happened was there's all firms are it depends on whether you're talking about really large organizations or small. Where most of the pickup of model-based workflows is around where more complex design build scenarios where the designer and the contractor can partner, and that problem I just described around the contract deliverables blows up, right? And so even within those organizations, there's pockets of expertise. And what I saw was two things. One is, all right, I have those pockets of expertise in those organizations found their voice in the larger organization because management saw value in it. And so I think in those companies, they accelerated their use of say VDC. And then, we would get a lot of phone calls from new companies that wanted to get some of it, because now all of a sudden they were thrown into a position of, in order to compete in just management projects, I need to look for new tools and digitize. So yes, that's what we saw.
So, in our case, we kind of play both on the construction side as well as on the operations side. In fact, we start in the construction phase in order to gather the information needed for operations. And ultimately, a lot of what we deliver, the digital twin, is in the context of how to operate and optimize the built environment in the run phase, in the operations phase. What we are seeing is a very clear acceleration towards convergence. Convergence, I would, just as you named this session, Ron, beyond 3D, right? So clearly 3D context is great and useful, but we're also seeing a definitive ask to converge data from so many data silos that today sits inside buildings in the operations space. You have building management systems, energy management, space management, maintenance systems, some separate IoT implementations, so on and on. So there's so many different distinct silos. And when building managers are trying to manage the environment in today's world, and they're trying to sit in front of a screen and try to get all the context they need to make decisions, they're suddenly realizing this is a problem. I mean, when you are sitting in an office and calling people and different people handling different things in a rather distributed fashion, it was still okay. But when you're trying to converge people around making decisions, being more efficient in delivering an outcome, that disconnected silo environment is certainly impacting them heavily. So that's I think the great outcome for the industry to think about truly converged, data-driven, contextual solutions that can help them deliver things faster and more efficiently. And I think that's going to certainly stick, because people have realized that, with Google Maps, you could go into any city that you never went to before and just find your way, and you're just great. Whereas in a building, most buildings still need that one guy who knows how to fix their problem to be around if something goes wrong. That's the biggest change that we believe will happen coming out of this.
So in our case, what we're primarily looking at is kind of the early stages of the design phase. And what I find most interesting, as I said before, is this idea that we will kind of evolve beyond kind of always getting together in the same place into kind of meeting more virtually. But like, as was pointed out, like being on a Zoom call like this, we're still kind of in separate rooms. Like, I don't feel like I'm there with you. But what's amazing about technologies like VR, that more and more people are kind of started to experience, is that I can get into a space. It might be a relatively simple space, and I can feel present with somebody else. Like if we were now inside Arkio chatting, we would feel much more like we are in kind of the same room than we are doing today. And we basically see this time and time again when we first introduce our kind of users to Arkio, and we go into the app with them and show them how it works, and it feels like we're like physically present. We do our stand-ups like inside Arkio, like regularly every week, like inside the company, which is pretty crazy to think about it. We're actually meeting inside the tool that we are developing.
Yeah.
And we've been doing obviously a lot of these these virtual events, and what we started doing is pretty interesting. So we've been doing these virtual panels with our beta users, and we kind of get together with them inside some model that they've created or that we've created, and we kind of sit there on our virtual chairs, and I have somebody next to me, and I'm chatting with him like he's actually sitting there. And it just feels completely natural, even though he's just like a red floating head. Like I don't see his actual face. And this is one of the things that is so interesting about VR, and what I think some people kind of at least misunderstood initially, that to create this sense of presence, you don't really need to have photorealistic environments. It's much more kind of basic than that. And ultimately, this is what has got me most excited about this kind of what can come out of COVID, is that more and more people will start to experience the true power of something like this, and then kind of start to really embrace it, even if it's just for the early kind of design phase. But you can use tools like this to truly understand the space before it's even being built. You can make better design decisions. That doesn't mean that you need to kind of develop the final construction documents in something like VR. But it can help inform a lot of those discussions, like for later on in the process.
Yeah, it's interesting. The what would let's think about out into the future, some like 2025. Let's go further, so give ourselves more time. It's 2030. Rich and Anand are now in. We got the same group. They're now talking about being 40 years in the construction software industry.
God.
Yeah, exactly. Clifton has broken 30, so that's cool. He's almost 40 at this point. And I'm not going to mention my, where I'll be at that stage, but it's 2030, it's 10 years from now. And we've invited a couple people into this call that are new to the construction industry. And we're trying to express to them how stuff used to get done, like let's say 2019, pre-COVID. So like, for example, the same way that a younger person would be shocked that a telephone used to be one to a house and it was connected to the wall with a wire. And why would that be? Or that you had to get up to change the TV channels. What the hell were people thinking? What will those things be, do we think, in the construction industry, where you're trying to explain it to somebody 10 years from now and like, people used to do it how? Holy cow.
First of all, you're not going to call like this, I can guarantee you that.
That's right. That's right. Even this, they'll be like, yeah, so do you just see a screen and people's face? That's crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, virtual presence and holographic meetings are going to be definitely real.
Yeah.
Whether it's job sites or whether it is office or whatever it may be.
I was going to say, I think all that also is going to get enabled by the convergence that you just mentioned, right? There's between sensors and reality capture and photogrammetry capture all kind of coming into the cloud. Really, the cloud and mobile becoming the new platforms, right? Where all the data is in a single location and almost near real time, or by that time it'll feel like near, closer to real time, where you have the context of the project, what's going on, updates from the field, either through even easier to use mobile devices that are capturing status on projects, all in a 3D, 4D, 5D context, is going to be a reality, and is also going to drive the thing that could also happen is we're already seeing a lot of prefab, a lot of offsite stuff happening, but a lot of I think robotics is also still at its early stages. That'll be if we can actually have a virtual reality in real time, certainly with sensors and stuff, driven by a digital twin that starts in the construction process and goes on to the operations phase, then they're going to be like, well, I can't believe you're manually building some of these things, and where robotics is going to come into play more there as well. I mean, we've been doing machine control automation for earthworks for a long time. There won't be people driving that equipment in the next 10 to 15 years. Probably it'll be fairly automated, as an example. And again, you'll be getting real-time feedback from sensors and those robotic processes, and the mobile devices we have that are on a human will be much more user-friendly in real time in terms of the data and progress that you get back. So you will be able to kind of remotely feel like you're completely in tune with what is happening on the job site and collaborating in a augmented virtual reality, whether you're remote or on site. Anyway, that's highly possible. I don't think I also caveat that with some pragmatism of being in the industry for 30 years.
Right.
Is that technology adoption is so slow in construction and engineering that 10 years feels like a long time, but it's really not that long for technology transformation within the industry. Although I feel like we're almost at the point of crossing the chasm, or even your average construction employee, they're also engrossed with technology in their everyday lives, that I think that is what's going to break down the barrier to adoption holistically from your project manager and design engineer to your foreman and machine operator on the job site.
Right, just a general comfort it's a generational change, as people who are afraid of computers are no longer in business. Maybe there's going to be an in-between there where there's Anand's vision of holograms at the building site and everywhere else, but they're actually still unrolling digital 2D drawings on top of the hood of a virtual truck. And then
possible, yeah.
I'm just reminded of a comment somebody made the other day, that innovation makes a single step forward with every funeral.
That's right. That's right.
Or retirement.
Retirement. Let's say retirement.
That's a little bit more pleasant.
Yeah. So Clifton, what were you going to add?
I think it's interesting with the I'll call it like the old, like just the delta between old millennials and young millennials. So I'm a super young millennial. I'm like at the tail end of millennialism, if you will. And the tail end guys, we grew up playing, multiplayer video games. Like that was part of our life, to hop on a Minecraft server and like collaborate with like 20 people we don't even know on something for fun. And so you absolutely need to have that same environment pulled into real life work. The collaborative environment and that multiplayer enabled. But What's even scarier is the Gen Z, the guys that are coming up out of school, graduating right now and entering the industry. Because these are people that they don't even know, like they weren't even around for floppy disks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're internet natives.
Mm-hmm.
So if millennials are digital natives, like Gen Z is like the internet natives. And their concept of work is going to be very different than even my concept of what work is. And so while the young guys they get excited about the technology, as Rich has said, their ability to wield it is going to be far beyond anything that we can imagine right now. Like when I started in the industry, I said, this is stupid that we're drawing parking garages manually all the time in every single project.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just make an algorithm that solves that problem. And so you're going to have the industry is going to have to face the reality of 15,000 point solutions solving archaically small problems that somehow gets integrated together. And if you look at other industries, they do it with APIs. That's going to be our future, is logic wrapped up in an API and sold to other people. At least for architects, that's kind of where I think the black hole of technology is pushing the industry. Not so familiar with the construction world, but it does blow my mind that I can generate a building that's compliant to like a volumetric prefab standard, and it's in TestFit, it's IBC compliant, the vertical circulation works and everything. Why can't we just ship that data file to a machine in some factory and it just fires up? And it absolutely can be done today, and people are doing it. But I think when you get a Gen Z in power, like there's all restraint for the past might be let go of. So I'm pretty excited. Like I can't wait to hire our first Gen Zer, because they're just going to bring a completely different perspective, which I'm excited about.
If I could tag on to that, I think we all probably agree with that. I mean, I've got Gen Zers. I'm old enough to have Gen Zers as my kids in college and graduating high school. And their experience, because not to bring it back to COVID, is they're not at school. They're remote. They're taking classes. Like my daughter might be at Virginia Tech down living in her group house, but she never goes on campus anymore. All her classes are remote. So that's changing their experience in terms of how do you collaborate just completely in the cloud, not just multi-game playing that was your experience. And I think they're going to bring that experience to the workplace for sure. And to answer the question about construction, I think construction has the same problem. There's, that API comment you meant, it's all about integration. Like software companies can't build point solutions anymore and expect to be all things to everybody, because our engineers, architects, and constructors all have a portfolio of 30, 40, 50 applications that they use to do their work. 80% of them don't talk to each other, and until they do, it's going to be a barrier to technology adoption. And so it has to be an API software economy, because that's what our customers are demanding and what will drive adoption.
Yeah. All right, Hilmar, what do you, other than everybody obviously designing in a VR context, what else will people look back
this
and
meeting
say,
would be in VR.
Yeah, we should have done that. Actually, I should have thought of that.
We should. So if we look 10 years into the future, and like we mentioned, the floppy disk and other things that just kind of, vanished. One of the things that kind of somebody might think strange in 10 years time, maybe a bit longer, I don't know, is the idea that we kind of do everything on these 2D screens in general, not just like architecture or design, but just this idea that you have this kind of a small piece of thing in front of you, and that's kind of your focus, that's the thing that you work on and get information from. Because one thing that I've seen in the past is that kind of, and this has been said by a lot of people, that people tend to kind of underestimate how long it takes for kind of new technology to gain foothold, to really kind of mature. But then they overestimate how long it takes for it to kind of change basically, entire businesses. Mm-hmm. And if you kind of look 10, 15 years into the future, my VR glasses won't be, like this. This is kind of the Oculus Quest 2 recently came out. They'll be closer to what I have now on my face, my glasses. Mm-hmm. And if you just think about that, what that will mean, that people will kind of look at the idea of like designing any 3D object on a flat screen as being something completely just out of the Stone Age. Mm-hmm. Like if you think about it, if I'm designing this glass, like I should be able to look at it like this and hold it in my hand. And I think that's going to probably happen faster than people think once the technology is mature enough, and it's taking very rapid steps towards basically, starting to happen, I have to say.
There is a risk if we have virtual reality adoption massively, and it's more convenient to put on a pair of glasses than to go somewhere. I actually think that the built environment might suffer from that. And people maybe care less about the physical environment, and because if more and more of your world life experience happens virtually, you're going to pour more effort into the virtual world. Mm-hmm. So there is a dystopian future in there somewhere that I think we should possibly caution against.
Yeah, I think there definitely is. And I've seen my kids obviously play with kind of VR a lot. They get into these games and get totally just taken up with them. And you have to wonder what's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years down into the future. But people have said that about everything, about newspapers, the internet, God knows what. And somehow humankind tends to kind of at least manage and figure out a way. Yeah. So I hope it's going to be the case with this, because this will be huge one way or the other.
Right. Anand, you were going to say something about the built world and the virtual world?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Clifton said. This experience of virtualizing everything has got to have a tremendous impact on the built environment. Not 10 years from now, maybe 20, 30 years from now. The built environment is going to be completely reshaped, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something that's we would even question, what is a built environment? Why do you need it?
Right. Why do you need it?
Exactly.
Great. Well, that's the 45 minutes that I promised that we would spend together. It's a fun conversation. I look forward to doing it again in 10 years precisely. I'm not going to send a Zoom meeting invite for that 10 years from now, because something tells me that we'll be using different technologies. But
this Zoom link is out of date.
This Zoom link is out of date. Right. Exactly. Awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good rest of your day or evening, no matter where you are.
That's fun.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Beyond 3D podcast, hosted by TechSoft 3D. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and leave us a review, or subscribe on SoundCloud. To listen to past episodes or learn more about TechSoft 3D, visit www.techsoft3d.com/blog. Send us comments and suggestions at info@techsoft3d.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us again on the next episode of Beyond 3D.